Hello, welcome to Real Love Guitars Workshop. This is Sam, and it's a sunny-ish day, and I'm just trying to move a few things around because I've got one thing here hanging up needing a final spray coat of matte spray, which guess what, I ran out of, so it's going to have to wait. But what we do have here is another guitar for a setup, and this is a filthy, lovely old thing. It's a Lindo, and this belongs to Stephen, and he's brought it in for a setup, but it has a gorgeous tone. Yeah, this is a really fantastic example of a cheap guitar that can play and sound beautiful. So what can you, well, first of all, before I go any further, what's unusual about this guitar that struck me straight away was it's got locking, well, sort of locking tuner, although the locking tuner part isn't used, so it's kind of a little bit loose. So the tuners work as you'd expect. Yeah, so but it's pretty filthy. So I mean, I don't want to change too much about this. I mean, obviously I'd love to get rid of all that snaky stuff, so I'm obviously going to get a chance to do that. The first right action is set by virtue of this locking nut business. So it's a kind of, you know, it's a mechanical factory chosen action really, which is a pretty good, I mean, in a way that alone is a good enough reason for having this locking nut arrangement, or put it another way, this metal bridge saddle unit. What it means though is that for it to work, you either have to get it perfectly positioned in the first place at the factory, or that someone has to file it to the exact first fret action that you want, and in this case it's superb. I couldn't better this. I wouldn't want to try. Whoops. Now this is what I did notice about this guitar is the action is a little bit close to falling off the end. Which is funny because even when I fall off the end, it still plays the right note. How strange. How does it do that? Weird. It's playing off the side. It's actually playing, it's using the side angle of the fret as its start point. I've never seen that happen before. We're actually playing on the beveled 30-45 degree angle. Incredible. I've never actually played a guitar like that. Anyway, the thing about this guitar is a couple of things to notice. First of all, it's incredibly filthy, but that's fine. It's well loved and well played, so we can clean it up a bit. But it's got a built-in amplifier-y preamp thing, and it's got one of those fairly robust output units here with a direct-to-desk bit and a XLR thing and a normal jack there. And so it's, you know, Lindo. It's a very budget brand, but it's it plays beautifully well. So what I'm going to do is, oh, the other thing to note is it's Stephen's put these brass pegs on there, you know, for, I guess, improve the sustain, or just they're nicer than the plastic things that fall apart eventually. So everything about this guitar is kind of as it should, so there's not an awful lot to do. It hasn't got a massive amount of wear, so there's nothing to kind of fix down there. The action's great down there. Could get it a little tiny bit lower down here, but that would just be a luxury. What I have noticed here is that the bridge is massively bent over. Now Stephen said something about there having been a problem in the past with the piezo pickup under here, and he wondered whether this was a kind of a solution, this angled business was a solution that somebody else who looked at the guitar had resorted to get it to play correctly. I'm not sure. So what I'm going to look at is reducing the action a tiny fraction, but also I want to know why this is tilting so far forward and whether it has to tilt, because if the bottom is lifting off the piezo pickup, it's probably not ideal. But we've got some amazing amount of goo. I don't know what someone's done to this finish. As you can see, it's really who knows. I'm kind of reluctant to stick anything on it, because for all I know it could be half rubbed off as is. So you know, you can take a little patch of this where there's some goo, and let's just have a look and see whether this naphtha solution does anything at all, good, bad or ugly. So I'm just sort of giving it a bit of a wipe down in this crook of this curve here, and just see if it gives us anything. You know, otherwise it's not really something I'd want to carry on attempting. But you know, if it does lift whatever this grime is and gives us a fresher looking guitar back, well, I have to say that doesn't look bad from here. It's cleaned up. It's hard to see because it's in the ditch, but yeah, it has cleaned up. So I could go as far as having a look at this top area here and just give it a bit of a rub over. I don't know whether something has been sprayed on here, whether this is just, you know, could well be sort of 20 years of kitchen grease, as you often get. And it does come off, and underneath we've got quite a nice shiny finish, which is in good condition. So I'll give it a rub down, why not? I mean, that goop looks pretty horrible. So we'll save that for fun later. So yeah, look at have a look at the saddle. It's slightly bellying like all guitars in this part of the world seem to do on closer examination. So again, I'm going to have a sort of look, make sure that's on, but I think it is. Shouldn't be much to do other than clean it up and restring it, and just see if we can sort out this leaning tower of pizza. Yeah, I mean, the thing about this leaning bridge, saddle, it will be pushing the intonation out. I mean, maybe somebody's tried to cure the intonation. That sounds sharp to me. That's better because it's standing up straight at that end, so something's gone wrong down there. We'll see. Anyway, so since there isn't fret leveling to do, really, and there's no major adjustment at this end, I think it's a matter of, let's slack these strings off and get a good look at this saddle. And I suppose I need these strings still on to allow me to, if I want to replace the saddle with something else, then I obviously want them on so I can play with altering the heights and so on. So having some spare strings handy would be very good. I'm wondering whether, ooh, that sounds a bit tightened or something. I'm wondering whether or not the sound is okay on this camera. Somebody mentioned that they were struggling to hear me on a previous video, and I'm not sure whether that was because there was a load of white noise outside from the wind or something else going on, but the limitation, now where did I put that? Mark had those the other day, can't see them. The limitation on this camera is the fact, alright, I'm missing a tool. Damn. I give it to Mark for pulling his saddle and now I've lost it. Aha, there we are. Sorry, little vole who's living in there. Yeah, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, the limitation of the sound on this camera is that it handles incoming sound in a particular way. Ew. What on earth is going on there? Handle sound in a particular way. And what that means is you're either stuck with the internal mics, which are pretty good compared to things that you find like on the GoPros, for example, but not so good when you plug a microphone in, because it seems to only like to have well, as far as I can understand, probably a passive plug-in mic, and everything I've got here, absolutely everything, from mics to mixing desk to headphone outs from other recorders, pretty much everything is a line signal, and for some reason it just, as soon as you put a mic into there, there's some sort of onboard balancing or limiting or not equalizing, but boosting thing that goes on, and it's not a nice effect, and it ends up with this all roaring sounds that just aren't particularly good. Anyway, so I just can't seem to make the thing work, and consequently I don't. Let's just have a look at this other saddle for a minute. This is a compensated saddle. I mean, it's huge and tall. What I'm noticing straight away about this piezo is it doesn't sit very far into the slot, and actually the reason why, okay, that one's too long for starters, but the reason why it's tilting over, as you can see how shallow it is, that slot on the guitar, you might argue, is not deep enough for the saddle to sit in without it being pushed over by the pull of the strings. So there's a kind of, one way we could look at it is to, we might have to go a little bit further on this now. Let's take these pegs out. One of the things you might look at is deepening this slot to allow the to allow the piezo strip to sit further, or the transducer I should say, to sit, transducer maybe, sit further into the slot. Otherwise it's always going to be bending forward, which is really not ideal. Now this one doesn't want to play the game and come out, but it does. So just, I mean, you know, at the moment it's playable, but it's not ideal. And what I don't want to do is make it completely unplayable in my attempts to make it more playable, if you get what I mean. So just looking at this thing here, first of all, this is quite a thick element, but it's, you know, it's a fairly standard looking thing. But what we've got is a slot that is, well, we can work out the differences, so let's just get this going. So we look at the slot and say, well, slot is, let's say, 422. I'll draw it here, 422, 422. It's actually blue, but it's calling itself black. It's got a blue label in this light. How weird. Okay, so we've got 422 depth, and then the kind of thickest part of the thingy is 281 thingy. You know what I'm trying to say, don't you? 281, so that's only 3. So 281 mils, 3. And so what it leaves us with a clever and amazing maths, I can't do it, is that would be 2, but it's not 2. It's 141. We've got but 1.41 millimeters to the top of the slot. Okay, which means this thing only sits 1.41 millimeters into the slot of the aforementioned. Now if I go 1.41, which I've just done exactly, and I'll draw it on here for dramatic effect, what I would do if I could find a pen. I had these all over at Mark the other day, so they're probably still over here. There they are. There's these old nuts as well. Everything we used the other day is still over there. I'm just going to draw a 1.4 mark across the top section so you can see the highest that it sits into the thing, assuming that's the same all the way across. I'm just doing this by eye just to give you a sort of an idea. Okay, so that is only how far into the slot this is sitting by the time it's sitting on top of that transducer or the pickup element. So the consequence is this is being pulled out, well, it's actually this way around, because it's sitting so shallowly in the slot, it gets pushed way over. It's not being held, plus the fact that it's not even snug. So ideally what we'd want is a deeper slot, or even technically to build this up. I mean, the point is that yeah, I guess you want a deeper slot, because this thing wants about the same for the action. It wants about the same amount, if not less, on top. But it's not the on top part that's the problem, as we've just talked about. It's the down below bit. So I can see right now, you see that it's not sitting anywhere. In fact, my line is generous. It's sitting actually higher than my line, but that's about right, roughly. It's actually sitting out. The slot, I think, is a bit shallower at this end, so we're actually sitting tall at this end as well. Hence, it's bending over like that, which will make the pressure on the piezo or the transducer element completely inadequate, or whatever some word is. Now, what I would prefer to do is I prefer to cut this down, or failing that, build it up, because what I don't want is I don't want this thing tilting over. I want it sat snugly, and I want the pressure all being transferred downwards, which it can't be if it's got room to lean over like this. The best thing would be to go down. So what do we have? If I look at the top of this, it's quite difficult to gauge because, as you can see, it's curved. So I'm going to be kind of guessing what the height is. But let's say we know that it's at least 6.26, and realistically, let's guess that it's probably, I'm going to just draw this thing for a minute onto here. I'm going to guess that it's about 7. All right, it's more than 6.26 anyway. And what I know is that we've got 4.22 cut into there already. So we do have some room to go down by the looks of it. Well, I would guess if it was just 4, it would be 3 millimeters. If it's 4.2, then it's 2.8. If my guesstimate is right. So we could drop another 2.8, and let's say we dropped, just to be conservative, 1.5, right? An additional 1.5 millimeters depth into that slot. What would it give us on here? Well, we know that we had 1.41, sorry, on here, we had 1.41 in the slot. We really want more, and so we could then have 3 instead of 1.41. Now 3, I'll draw it on the other side. This is really fiddly, but it's kind of, you can see my working logic. If I go for 3, and I know I'm sort of being conservative really, I'll draw 3 on this, just for to show you what 3 looks like in practice, just to get an idea of how far that will sit in. Now what you can probably guess right away is that there's no way I'm going to be able to do it on this saddle that I've got here, so we're going to have to either make one or buy one that fits. But let me just show you what a seating of 3mm would look like. So we would say we would go from it sitting that far into the wood to it sitting that far into the wood, into the bridge, with as much above as much or as little as we want. But if ignore the fact there isn't much here, because it's obviously we've got a limited bridge here. Now, one of the things I know about this is I can tell what the actual configuration of the thing is, so I can see. I just want to match up the intonation and make sure they're the same. Now, what we've got is if I were to go dead center on both these points. Now, one of the things I know is, if you remember, I said that the positioning of these strings was a bit too far to that edge. So what we've got here is a saddle I could use which mimics the same compensation, exactly in the same places, and the curvature of the apex of the saddle goes across the top. So they're the same saddle design. If I were to go for the exact center point and duplicate these two and say, well, let's match up the two compensated B slots, then I would take a bit off the top there, a little bit off the top there. But do you remember, actually what I really want to do is push everything a tiny bit this way, right? And so to do that, what I can do is, let's say I line up these two exactly. That then pushes the B slot a tiny bit this way, and actually what it then means is I've got to take everything off this end. Isn't that clever? So I'm just going to mark my words, mark my spot at this end, and I would start with a file, and then I could just sandpaper it down. So there we have a duplicate, which I'm going to kind of propose that I make all the removal on this end, and then we have a duplicate saddle with everything, the strings naturally then shifted by about, I can tell you by how much, by about the millimetre I want. Yeah, it's about 1.5 millimetres. No, in fact it's about 1 millimetre exactly to this side, which is what I want. So that's my cunning logic. So if I put this in here and just hold it tight and get me oh, I can't even reach through here anymore. What's going on? This is a bit crude actually. I might, sorry. That'll do. Just put that out of the way. So I'm just basically just going to start by doing a quick reduction. It's a bit crude, like I said, but it's actually easier to do it flat at this point than it is to start with it on the sandpaper, because bizarrely you can end up with something off the perpendicular quite quickly when you use the paper, if you use it to shorten something like that it is. Okay, so let's have a look a little bit more to clear. You can see it's still above the line. And of course the primary check is to stop when it fits inside. The length tallies up exactly, so I can see that's still about the millimetre left to go. I'm gripping it very low because it stops it from cracking off or splintering as much. It's not springing backwards and forwards as I'm cutting. Lower the better, really. Okay, so at this sort of point in time, it's nice and flat thanks to the file, and what I can do is just have a look now, and I'm going to need to round it off on the sandpapery thing, which is currently covered in rosewood from filing down the bridge on Stevens SX. So I'm just by hand rounding this off, sort of to recreate the nice rounding on the other end, and a little bit on the end to make sure it's down to the length we want. And again, just a double check, and we're just a fraction off it fitting in. So at that point I would just take just a tiny little bit more off this end and round it off and see how we're getting on. Fly in here, down there. There we are. We are exactly on. Ooh, we are. Are we exactly in? Yeah, we're exactly in. Now even this is a tiny bit bigger than I want, and I would probably want to buttress this out with a little bit of plastic or something white to stop it. But bearing in mind, if we were 3mm into there, that would fit an awful lot better, or it would sit an awful lot better. So now what we've got is we've got a replacement bridge cut saddle. I need to change the words. Replacement saddle cut to size. We've got the only defined string position on here is as defined by the compensated slot, and now that's in the place I want, and it moves the string slightly to one side. Of course, what it won't do is it won't move the original start point of the string, so there will be a tiny little movement that goes like this. What the truth is, the bridge is fractionally off place, off line in terms of the neck, and I'll be kind of forcing the strings a little bit, 1mm this way to line them up better, or even 0.5 mm, just to improve on what it was. We can't use this anyway because we need a deeper thing, so we're going to recreate it, but I've given it the chance to move 0.5 mm to 1 mm this way. The amount of movement on the string is going to be so small it's not going to be a problem. But we do have a challenge now that comes out, which is, given that I think we can lose 1.5 mm extra off this, how the hell do we do it? So the first thing is, let's just hoik that off to one side and tape it somewhere safely out of the way. I can't really, at the moment, I don't want to put my hand inside and disconnect this whole entire thing if I don't have to, because it's a lot of hard work. So just from the point of view of, we need a base, we need some rosewood, we need some element, and we need a saddle. If we ran out of rosewood and we got down to top, it still would work, but I don't want to do that. I want to end up with enough material there that it still forms a solid foundation for it. So remember, I said it's at least 6.2 mm. Let's go on the conservative side and say, if we went on 6.2 mm, we know that we've got 4.2 to the bottom of the slot currently, 6.2, let's say, to the floor. That means we had another 2 mm of play. That means I could play with 1 mm of it absolutely safely, which means that we would end up with our saddle sitting in 2.5 instead of 1.5, which is still better. You can kind of, it won't fit in, but you can kind of see it there, that it feels much better even sitting in. But that element, as I said, is 2.81, so that's quite a big drop. Now what did I say? I said we could drop 2.5, didn't I? If we said it was 7, at 2.8, so 6, 8, 7, right, so that's 7 to the bottom, 2.8, we don't want to do 2.8. We could take 1.3, and that would leave us 1.5 mm. 1.3, 1.3, another 1.3, it would leave us 1. 2.6 or 2.8? It's 2.8. So we took another 1.3, that would give us 3 mm instead of 1.5, or would give us 2.8 mm, 1.3. So let's do the 1.3, and then it would give us a sunk depth of 2.8 instead of the original 1.5. It's all a bit dreary and technical. Now the question now, which I have no idea how I'm going to answer, is how in heaven's name am I going to take this down 1.8 mm cleanly. Now I did find a little router-y thing the other day, which happens to be exactly the right size, but what I don't know, and because I don't have a Dremel router unit, and I don't really think it would, well, I I'm pretty certain I wouldn't be able, I'd have to build this up and build a strange jig. So that would be quite tricky. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do some experiments on another piece of rosewood to see if by hand I can just use this to lightly hand lower this. And what I'll do obviously is I will hand lower from a spot and measure away from, cut away from that spot, so I've got a little shelf if I do it this way, and then I'll be able to keep going until I can see the difference between that shelf, and then I'll complete the shelf once I've got the larger part down to a flat. Anyway, but yes, it's quite an interesting little challenge. But I haven't played with this before on a piece of rosewood or any kind of wood, so let me find some rosewood. I usually have some, I used to have some kicking about in a container of bits, which of course I won't be able to find that. But instead of that, if I haven't got rosewood, I've got a bit of mahogany here that I can play with, which will have a similar sort of thing. So what I'll do is I'm going to draw myself a little trough from nothing. Actually, I've got two things, I've got maple and I've got mahogany to play with, so in this little sample. So let's draw me a little slot that I want to cut to a certain width and see if I can manipulate that by hand. There's one drawn slot, and then on over here on a piece of maple, I'll just use the whole width of that maple to try and cut out. Obviously there's going to be glue at the edges, but I'll see if I can cut myself out a dependable slot in that. The question for me is, can I cut it nice and straight? And the next question after that is, can I cut it to a comfortably familiar depth and keep it the same? So I'll do my experiments and I'll let you know in a second. Quick update on this. My little tests have shown, yes, I can cut some grooves in there. I haven't gone the whole length. What I'm doing, well, I've sort of done a little measurement and actually dropping this into the slot, which is perfectly the right size, and going down till it's flush with the top of the slot gives me the thing I need. It's a bit noisy, but you see what I'm doing. Like that. And then I can move side to side if I want to. And there I have the thing cut out to about the right depth. And actually, if I were to just do a quick, and this is without any tidying up, but let's do a quick, I said a quick thing. We go, what do we want? We wanted a slot of, oh god, not 4.2, we wanted 4.2 plus 1.3, which was 5.5. Minus 0.2, that's not helpful. 5.8. Yes. See you at the end of it. Now FYI, I had a little mishap while doing the drilling. Severed the earth wire. Just caught the edge of the little routy thing. And ended up taking this out, which had to feed it through an invisible tie clip anyway. Oh shit, everything's going to be making wrong noises. Sorry. Anyway, it's not a big deal. I've ordered another one in case, but I'm going to repair this one since it's the original. But just in case I can't repair it, shouldn't be a problem. It's more about, I can repair it. It's more about can I get the sheathing down to the right size to go through the holes. I mean, I prefer to repair this one because it's the right thickness for the job I've just cut. If I get a new one, it's more than likely going to be a thinner thing. But I've got an Artec one on its way. What I want, which I'm not sure I've got, is some very, very fine, the thinnest of those little shrink wrap doofers thingies. And I've probably got them lounging around the bottom of some container somewhere, but they're not here. Oh yeah, I've got one. Hey, one in red. Everything else is too big, but mercifully I've got one there, one in blue that's a bit bigger. I can probably just get away with it. and then one in purple that will shrink around the whole thing. Alright, that's better than I thought. I just want one to join the... I'm going to cut and rejoin those because there's loads of extra room on these things. So yeah, that's good. All new stuff. So I'll cut and cut and basically give myself a bit more room and then rejoin at a certain point, and then yeah, and just insulate off. But there's enough, there's more than enough material there to make a join. But I'll obviously, what I'll do is I'll cut it in a similar sort of zone, which is there and there, and I'll feed this back out to wherever I can feed it out. We'll lose about 2 inches off the whole length, but it's superfluous anyway. So that's what I want, is a kind of clean run on the sheathing to join to the sheathing, and the hot wire to join to the hot wire. That's a much better option. So then I can join that up, sheath it, and join that up, and then sheath that, and then with this one, so we've got 3 different sizes. And then come the end of it, I'll just trim this off a tiny bit, which is probably about right, and that'll go over the whole lot and just bend over. Not quite as nice as the original sheathing stuff, the black stuff that came. This feels really efficient. But anyway, I'll go offline and just fiddle about with this in what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, offline soldering mode, because it's probably just going to be boring and close up. And then I've got to get onto Paul's ukulele, baritone ukulele. A quick setup on that shouldn't be difficult. Oh, and I've got to find some dot markers. Yikes, I've got them somewhere. Right, and there's my 2 little bits, and I will just, I'm taking you through it already. Using my fingernails as always to try and get the break to happen. There we go. It's very fine, but I want me to get them joined up and sheathed off, and then it should be fine, because this will sit inside the body anyway. Okay, off. I'll go off and get my soldering iron wired up to do that, and then I'll park this one and come back to it a bit later. Okay, so reinstated. Doesn't strictly, I don't think, need the plastic coating around there. It's gonna, although actually, having just said that, it probably would benefit from having the same amount on all of the pieces. So I've got the 6 sort of piezo bits here, and some of them now are not covered. So I will now go and get another one and join it across and even this thing up. I was going to perhaps leave it, but I quite like the fact that it's covering the corner, so it's a nice, it keeps the bend safe. So what I'll do is I'll go to here, join it up, and snip it off there in a minute. Or I'll do it first. There we go. I don't want to overlay the next one, so I'll just butt these 2 up together, roughly like that. And fire my thingy away. Quite difficult stuff to use this without setting fire to everything and ruining everything forever. But you keep it moving and it will do the job. Something like that. Yeah. Okay. Stay there, out of the way. And then a tiny little bit on the end I can snip off. If I can find where it is. There you go. Okay, so I can see the bits where it should sit. Let's see how it lines up back in the guitar for a minute. I'm going to switch to do another guitar in a second, so move that. Sorry, a ukulele I should say. So that's out of the way. That can go in the spares department, which it has. That's the one we're using. With my solder and stuff. Get rid of this pile of So I need to check my nuts, check how many nuts I've got, because I might need to reorder some. Okay, so there's a repaired thing. I'll just put these bits off to one side for a minute, because what I just want to do now is, I suppose I just want to put it in place and give it a bit of a tap just to make sure it's picking up. There's no reason why it shouldn't be. Have I got a converter that I can plug in? Ooh, no, 2.5. I haven't got a 3 to a 2.5 converter, have I? What's this? No, no. That's a 2.5. That's a mono. I haven't got a converter to plug that into an amp. But so there we are. It's as is, so it should be alright. The question is getting it back up through this hole. I'm going to make sure that it will still go through there. Yeah, it should do. I've got to find it. Not easy to find. Or get your hand in whatever position will eventually get it through there, which as you can probably tell I'm failing spectacularly to do. Let's try it from this end. No, it cannot work, is it? I need a small Vietnamese child. Can I get anywhere near the top? Oh Lord, I don't have any way of gripping it and bending my hand at the same time. Oh, nearly. There's the end. There's the end. Oh, missed. It's in the hole. Right, first of all, that hole I'm going to just enlarge it slightly. Otherwise, I'm going to run the risk of just losing the sheath on this thing as I go through, which I really don't want to do. So, a clean transition first and foremost is what I want. It's hard to manipulate. Okay, there is our piece, and it's now we can press it down with this fella here, see how we sit. It's a bit tilted at the moment, so I want it to sit where it wants to sit, or where it should sit. That's okay. So I'm not sure about this. I don't know whether I could do without this. What's the word? Yeah, I wonder if I could do without the sheathing. It's so thick. I don't know whether it's really what I want. It's not the same kind of, quite the same kind of sheathing that was used. Let's try and get it to sit. It's twisting a little bit. That's one thing I don't like. So I don't want this. I want to just twist the whole thing so it sits flat. Right, that's sitting flat. Then I can push it. That's better. That's better. Aha! Push it into its correct place. And then drop this on top of it. Now, what I'm looking at is, maybe because of the thickness of the material, the purple stuff, but it doesn't quite sit as flat as I'd like at this end. Let's again lift it out. I'll use the little bit at the end. Let's just examine that edge there, whether I can clean that up or reduce it down any. It worries me that it's just piling up a little bit more than I want. Damn. Pull it through, and we've got room to work on that a little bit. Can do just slightly. Get anything from the tool rack. Let's put my zooming in glasses on. So have a look what we've got here. Just looking at the flatness of the bottom here, make sure it's even. It's not perfectly even all the way across. I'm seeing a line actually. Did I draw that line on there? I think I might have done by accident when I was marking it. Looks like somebody had drawn that there to cut it at some point, but I think it was me marking the extent of the thing. So what I'm just doing here is tidying up this end of the slot to make sure that it's getting as clean a seating as possible at the height that I arrived at, and I'll just again just sort of try it, poke it through and try it. Come on, through you go. This is a bit loose actually for my liking. I don't want to be pulling this. Yeah, it doesn't really want to. It doesn't really want to stay wrapped or wrapped. I need it smaller and tighter, please. Come on, behave. And this end too. Smaller and tighter. Come on. Thank you. So at least I stand a chance of getting it back through here. That's it. Right, that might sit in a bit better now. Let's turn it again. It seems to want to just, by definition it seems to want to sit in a funny angle. Right, that is looking more like it. What I'll do is I'll just draw a line on it for a minute and see just whether it's off a mile or what's sticking up and why. Actually, look, that tells us it is sitting pretty well in place. And what we have got is a higher, obviously we've got a higher bit at this end anyway, so that's okay for now. So that sits in that bit there. That looks, it's deceptive because it looks like it's sitting miles out here, but if I were to, it's not the right pen really. If I were to just press down and draw along here, which I can't do both very well at the same time. That, you can see that's a fairly even sit all the way across, although it looks a bit odd. It is actually sitting as much down at this end as it is at the other end by the time you've got the strings pressing on it. So I'm not at all unhappy about that. It's still probably worth lifting it up again one more time and just cleaning up the slot a little bit more while I'm at it. A bit of gentle pulling out, just making sure basically there's no bits. I mean, I'm never going to sand it absolutely smooth, but it's just a sort of a matter of making sure there are no obvious sticky up bits stopping things sitting cleanly in the slot, and then just kind of cleaning it out really, and then do the other side. There's just little bits of sticking out edge to flatten it, level it. So this is all of this really is just to ensure that this pickup sits, the whole thing, pickup and saddle sits deeper into the bridge, deeper into the bridge than previously, so that we don't get that leaning forward thing, because the leaning forward thing not only stops the saddle from sitting squarely on the piezo, but it also tilts or pushes the intonation point of the saddle way out of whack this way, and makes the thing sharp. So looking at that, I feel okay about that, and then we'll work the saddle from there onwards. Just looking at the amount of movement, there's still a little bit of movement which I would want to shim out, just because the slot is a bit bigger than I'd want, so I'm going to ultimately, when I've got everything to the right size, I'm going to super glue a little tiny thin piece of plastic at the front of here, which will then just stop it from moving, and I'll cut it flush with the deck. It's just as a sort of stabiliser, really. We could do it with glue, but obviously I don't want to do it with glue because that would glue the piezo into place. Now, the point here is the piezo theoretically should be functioning, and before I go and do any more fiddly work, I don't really care right now about trying to feed it back through this cable tie at the moment. I can sort of double tuck it away at a later point, but what I really want to know is that it's working. So I'll just drag it over here. Oops, sorry about that. Just drag it over to here. Plug it in. Do it quick. That's working. Okay. So that's good. Repaired. And I've got a spare one coming that I can use another day. But that's always a good precaution, safety measure. Okay, so what I'm going to do, having confidently fixed that, I'm going to stick this to there for a little while. And I'm going to hang this, or place this out of the way and get on with, oh sorry, you're over there, didn't see you. I'm going to get on with the ukulele, baritone ukulele. Just do a quick work on that. Now, before I do anything else, I've got to find the dot markers. Oh, I'm on a different guitar altogether here, and it's jumping about a bit. This is Stephen's, well, let's put that down there, Stephen's Lindo, and this guitar, you know that grease that builds up on some of your ovenware or your kitchen surfaces or your cupboards where your plates live and stuff. If you're not careful, over the years it builds up this sort of greasy layer that's impossible to remove. Well, this is it on a guitar, and it's the same kind of stuff. So this is, I don't know if it's thousands of years of student digs or being literally hung in someone's kitchen. It feels like it might have been left in a sort of a galley in a boat, or a longboat or something, you know, a canal boat. Thank you. Canal boat or something for years, where it's picked up all the billions of fried breakfasts, and that makes this almost Teflon? No, it's non-stick. Velcro layer of stuff that's impossible to get off, and after about an hour of hard whatever that word is, aerobics, I've got it cleaned. And also we've done that bridge adjustment and repaired the piezo saddle thing. So I'm kind of in the mood to start getting it back together. There's no rush for these particularly, but I just wanted to get them done before I take a few days out, go and look after my old dad up in the Midlands. Sort of let my stepmum get away for a week. She never has a break, so it's long overdue. Anyway, so I just want to get these, as much of these done as possible. And this one, it is nice to see it reappear from all its grime. And not that it will make any difference to the sound, but it will feel a lot nicer to hold for once. But it's kind of quite humid down here at the moment, so worked up a nice sweat doing it. I also took a break to release 2 shrews and a vole who weren't enjoying cohabiting, and one of them had been, in fact I think both of them, the shrews had only been in the box an hour or so, but the vole had been overnight, and he was fully recovered, and one of the shrews was raring to go anyway, and the other one was looking a bit, I thought it was dead actually when I took it over the field. Anyway, I went across the field and the vole went, sorry, the jumping shrew went first, happy as anything. The vole went second, and he was in pretty good shape as well. And then finally I lifted out the other shrew, and to my surprise he was yeah, all right, and made off. These tunas have actually got plastic on them. This is grotesque. It shouldn't be allowed. I'm not allowing it. You don't come to bring your car to my garage and get to leave the plastic on the seats. They're off. Right. Okay, so just a quick tighten up with these tuning heads. Nice quality. I don't know if they were, I can't believe they were original. They're Chinese made, but they feel too good to be original. But hey, this is a guitar with a locking nut, budget acoustic with a locking nut, so why not? Okay, so let's have a feel of this. So great. This is really nice to see this come up from the goo. The rag that I used to clean it off has gone yellow from yuck, so that's going in the bin. But as we stand, this is all pretty much ready to get put back together again, and the only thing I'm going to get to do now is to reduce this. There's a little bit more polishing I could do here, but I don't know if I've got the strength. You can always find the odd spot that still has a bit of this frying pan goo still on it, but it's mostly cleaned off, which is nice. Yeah, so this is a matter of taking the saddle down, and I'll go off camera to do this because it's a bit fiddly. I'll just be back on the forwards with the sanding and filing up here. Then I can listen to the radio. But yeah, so that's it. File it down, then I'll put new strings on and we'll just get the right way around. I'll just get the thing back together and try it out. But obviously it's way too high right now. I've just got to make sure I can ascertain how tall it needs to be. So it's a bit. I won't know immediately because obviously I've changed it all around by digging the slot deeper, so we've got a much stronger thing. I've also got a piece of plastic here, which the intention will be to just slightly pack out the. I'll stick a little thin piece of this to the front of the finished nut, which we can then sort of shove in there, and it'll just hopefully keep it from rocking. Alright, so I'll see you in a little bit when I've got me nut back on. Strike that. Saddle back on. Never remember the word. Okay, so I haven't done that bit yet. I'm jumping around. I've not done what am I fly. What am I looking for? Ooh, these are shiny. Silk and steelies apparently. The golden red 6 and 5. Okay. Brass 6. Red A. Brass brass E, red A. E and A. EA. Now this is going to require some outing, toing and throwing. Oh, you know what, I'm so silly. I don't want to do it with these. I've done this before and I want to do it with the old ones. Just be patient, sunshine. It'll pay off. Why put any damage onto these strings when we can use the old ones that sort of come off here in this big mess? What I'm going to do is chop some of this down for starters, if I can. Because we're just going to need to use this to basically work out the amount of saddle to take down. So I'm going to chop off with something, chop off the excess so I don't get too much tangled in everything. With a bit of luck, should be able to get it out. It's a fiddly, boring task, this. Sometimes it makes sense to spend a little bit of time offline, just pulling them, getting them straight with a pair of pliers, because then you can get it done a bit quicker. So anyway, this will just be enough to put it on for the time being. Okay, so we've got plenty to take down on that saddle, but that's fine. Strings dangling everywhere. Got the wrong specs onto this, so I wonder, see what I'm doing. I'm just looking at the positioning at the moment where it's just a marker. I've put a marker notch on the top, and I've gone to one side so I'm aiming to realign the strings a little bit, but may not really want to go that way, because it may just be a little bit too far to one side cosmetically. Yeah, it might just be the case. So there's a starter notch. I'm going to just use this as a guide, and I may have to go somewhere halfway in between, really, which, considering it's not going to be that far off where it was before, is not a problem. But I should have liked to have realigned it a bit, but you can't do much when the neck is where it is on an acoustic. Anyway, I'm just getting all these three back into. Now I'm missing a peg, there's one. And the final three strings in. And naturally they just want to sit in their original place, courtesy of the alignment of the neck, but I was hoping to just maybe move them half a millimetre or something. Please, strings. Move first jump. I really should stop and totally tidy up, because I'm not getting much room to move in at the moment. That one is the B string. I think these are all quite heavy gauge actually, so we might be going just a fractionally lighter on this one. These are quite new strings as it happens anyway, but they're going to get sacrificed. We have all good strings, but it's quite good to use sacrificial strings if you know you've got to lift up and drop the strings back a few times. Otherwise you're just kind of wearing out perfectly good new strings for no good reason. I can't get this over here. Come on, thank you. Just listened to something on Radio 4, and it was supposedly a comedy thing featuring, oh, that's quite good, this is an adjustable nut. I haven't seen that part of it. It's very good. Tilts up and down on a little metal base, so that's quite innovation. I wonder if I could buy some of those, because they're really smart. Anyway, yes, I was just listening to a so-called comedy thing that they just played around the 6:30 kind of slot on Radio 4, and it featured Michael Palin, apparently. Oh, there you go, that's just snapped off, damn. It featured Michael Palin, and I have to say, it was dire. I don't know how we could get away with it, or why they commissioned it, or just bizarre, really. It was expressly unfunny. Now this is going to be tricky. I may not. You've got a curved bent string that's snapped almost too short. You may not get it on again, in which case I'm stuck for a replacement to do this one's job. I'm going to try and see if I can get it to hold. Yeah, it might hold for a minute. Okay, so let's see where it wants to be and where I can persuade it to be. What's that goo on there? Sticky stuff. I don't understand. Ew. That's what's made this guitar so sticky. Right, so what I wanted to do is I wanted to push that one to there, that one to there, this one to here, this one to here. Well, first of all, the spacing there isn't that good. I'm just trying it out for size. And it will do it if the slot is deep enough, and it's obviously not quite at the moment. Okay, I'm just now looking at the actual spacing. That's realigned it, but it does push the... What is that? What is that shit that's coming off here? Sorry, but whatever it is, it's making this guitar sticky. It's just lobbed onto the body from somewhere, from these pegs, I think. Somebody's covered in something. Anyway, yeah. So this is an interesting little bit of a push to get the spacing better, and it messes a little bit with the look of the thing. If you go back to where it's comfortable, let's go off half a mil off the mark. Let's see what we get. Hard to actually line it up without, press it down without it moving, but that's sort of where it wants to be without too much movement. That's nearly right. It's funny, isn't it? How strange. How strange. And if we, well, the point is I can't go back to where it was because there is no where it was on this particular. This particular that's the word I'm looking for, saddle. We could go with a measurement wherever that's gone. So a very slight push to the side only. We had a 10mm spread previously. That's 11. So in the slot is the 10. In the slot is the 10. Okay, that one's a bit off the mark. Okay, well in that case, let's just remark these. That's on. Just a tiny bit Difficult to make adjustments now because I have to get this off so far off that I can get access to it. The one file that I can do it with, and then we go halfway between those two. Let's just tighten that up and see where it sits. Okay, well that's not bad as a position on the what's it, and that one's the same. That one's got a bit more of an angle, visual angle than that one. But the spread is quite good. So let's just double measure these again. I'm not too bothered about what it looks like. I want it spread over the fingerboard as well as it can, as good as it can be. So what would we have between these 2 points now? Okay, we've got sort of 52.5 spread across here. The original one, it's hard to exactly specify because there's a bit of a mess here. The original one was tighter, it was 50, probably 52 exactly. So 52 divided by however many, 6 or 5 spaces, 50, that's 24, that's 10.4. 10.4 is the spacing, which is where I was just looking at there. 10.4. 10.4. So we're moving it one way to, slightly one way to get the thing off the mark, oh sorry, off the edge, and that's what I wanted, a start point that was slightly off. So this one is a fraction too far, although it looks straight, but I suspect that's because of the way this pin's gone in, which is really weird. Gently lever it up for a second, turn it round if I can. It's kind of designed so that the string sticks up under the hole, but okay, so 10.4 centre to centre, that's pretty close. Then tighten this one up again. We've got 10.4 to this next one. And that is about spot on as well. 10.4, I like it. And then 10.4, this one goes to the black one, which is about right. Let's add a different mark in there. Already drawn a replacement mark on it. Is good. 10.4 is almost spot on that one, and this one is about right too. And that's actually, let's just double check that, 10.4 to the centre. That's okay. This is, if anything, a absolute smidgen too far to the left again, so I'm just going to see if I can bring it in one more tiny bit. Where is it currently sitting? It's not the piece. That one. I need my special glass, which is no longer there. I've put it somewhere now, I don't know where it is. Magnifying glass, where are you? Lost. It was a pretty good little tool until I went and lost it. somewhere. Okay, well, it's a bit messy, so I have no idea where that special magnifying lens has gone, because it's not kicking about here. So, come on, you. Okay. That is getting there. Strings better aligned, positions good. So that's the problem with that broken string, no good at all. So I'm just going to confirm that slot there. Likewise this one. Likewise that one on the black line. It was on, yeah, it was on the black line, that's where I wanted it. Black line on the mark it's on. Where's this one? Hard to see them exactly. Okay, this is where it goes wrong. So that 10.4 is good. 10.4 is good. This one's gone way off the mark now because I lost sight of it. Oh, it's gone off. So it's that A that's not right. I'll just get these marked and happy with the markings, and I can work downwards from there and make them count. So it's that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one, that one. Okay, that's all of our slots done. Now the question while I'm at it is how much to take off. I've lost my measuring device. I think it's in the house actually. Let's use this instead. So currently, can't see a damn thing on that. It's a mess. Currently that is running at 4.5 millimeters, and really I want 2.5. 4.5 and 2.5. Let's do it at 12 so I can do the maths. That's currently running at, that's 3. Let's call it 3, and I want it at 2.5. Did I say? 3 and 2.5. What I'm also noticing, by the way, is we've got, I've seen this before, we've got a bend. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, we've got a ski slope going on. That's not a good guide then. Oh dear. I hadn't noticed this before with this guitar. I had a guitar like this. It's bending massively from here onwards, downwards. So the action to here is completely different from the action from that point onwards. So I'm not really looking at, I don't care about that stuff from there. What I care about is the 12th fret really then, which is not so bad. from the playing side. So we are on, like I said, 3, and I want to go down to the 12th fret 2. So that's a millimetre, so I need to take 2 millimetres off this thing, and that's what I'm going to do. And I don't think I will have to use these strings again since they've already given up the ghost. But that, yeah, this is oh well, I hadn't noticed that before, but having now seen it, that's a bit of a bummer. It's sort of the end of the guitar really, in a way, although it still plays, but obviously you can't play really at the top because it's not got the action there because of the strange downhill curve. It's really weird how that happens. Although, like I said, I had one that was an encore and it had given up the ghost as well. So, okay, so let's just get these old strings out of the way for good. What that greasy goo is that has come along for the ride with these things. But so it's 2 millimetres off the 2 millimetres off the base of the saddle. And I'll use my, oops, I've taken the little shim away, the side shim I should say. So 2 millimetres off the base, so I'll mark that up and then wear it off with this. And 2 millimetres all the way across. Oops. So there's my 2 millimetres. You can hear next door neighbour's boy yelling his head off about something. He's not happy. Quite difficult to do this with a thin bridge, because a saddle, because there isn't a lot to rest on to do your mark. So that's done by eye across there, and then I'm going to just mark it off with some colour so I know which side I'm working on. Compared to, there's 2 lines on here, I don't want to get confused. There we go. That's the bit to remove. I want to do it evenly, so I could have done 2 things. I could have filed it, or I can just put it on here and wear it down quite crudely to begin with, and then pay more close attention as we get down to the, make sure it's perpendicular and flat across the bottom so that it sits as neatly and nicely in the slot as possible. So I can just kind of watch it. I tend to try to give it an even amount of push across its whole length, so I can see it's cutting evenly and straight. And we're down to about 1 millimetre now left to go. I tend to just move my body more than my hands to do this, so I can get a square cut, as square as I need. As it gets down towards the mark, I've been very careful then to make sure it is cut at 90 degrees. So I sort of slow down at that point and just concentrate on less volume coming off, but more of a more care on the angle. It's looking good, getting down towards it. See where we are, nearly on the line, looking good, square. glasses. And that will do me. So that's the 2mm taken off that side. I'm not going to worry too much about this side. That will sink below the level, and I don't want to take any off that side because I want the thickness of this as much as possible. Okay, so take this, take that, put that in there. Okay, so that's where we are in physical height, and then we've got this. I'd like to stick this on, but if I can get away without sticking it on, it's probably easier because sticking it on adds more thickness to it. We should be at the right height now. Shouldn't really be an issue about taking any more, taking the saddle down any further. So I'm just trying to really ease this in and down. It's just there as a bit of a buffer, filler. I'm trying to get it to. That's right, it's going in. It's just there to fill out this space so that it reduces any chance of the saddle rocking forward, which I don't want it to do. So I'm going to get it just mostly to sit in there tidily without too much trouble. And I don't really even care about cutting it if I don't have to. It doesn't look like anything bad, but it definitely stops the rocking motion. Right, let's come back to our cool looking strings and we get these back on. And we should be in the sort of playing sort of zone now, and hopefully these will sit right on top of their mark as good as possible. So we go brass to red, and then we go, what do we go, green, black and green. Black and green indeed. Black, green, and then we're going purple and clear, grey, bear. This is the word I'm looking for. Purple and bear. Okay. Get in there. Get in and sit tidily. That one's kind of cut into the wood quite a lot, really. As his has that one. Okay, so I'm going to just shove some of this stuff around here so I've got a bit of room. And come up this end, a bit of dust on there, I shan't worry. Now I'm just worrying about getting this threaded and on. So pull it up, pull it back a whole fret and wind it on, and I go over the loose one first and under on the second run round, and then let it sit. Okay, that's going to give me a 12th fret action of something like just over 2. Now, while I'm at it, the truth about that is I could afford just a tiny fraction more off that because it's just over 2, which is a bit more than I wanted. So, given where we're at, I'm going to pull this one more time, dangle all this madly out of the way for a second, and just take a tiny fraction more off this, just so that we get the playing action that's worth, that we actually notice has changed. Otherwise it doesn't really change much at all. Okay, so we've got a bit more, if anything, to come off the treble end. Now, what I don't have here at this point in time is any reference point other than this line here. So I'm going to attempt, that's not really a very good way of doing it, but let's put that on there, see if I can just use that to help me just draw a tiny guideline down here. not so bad. That is probably in total about another half. I won't go to the line on this, I'll just take it down a bit more. Flat on the bottom, flat on the bottom, close to the mark, tiny bit more, and that's it then. That'll do me. Are we flat? 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 We're flat. Right. That's done, that's done, that's done. Shift, shift, shift. Right, let's try and get this back in with the shim in place, but I may not be able to do it. I may be able to do it. It's amazing, I can. Oh, hey. Right, so we're back on with our E. Okay, now let's put in our A. This is it's a shame to note, to discover this has got the broken or the bent neck. It's yeah, it's a little disappointing. I hadn't seen that. I hadn't really given it a close look. It just sort of it has a nice play all the way up to that point, but it's got one of those kinks, which from a player's point of view, I suppose all it means is that the action certainly gets higher at that point, but it actually doesn't get any harder to play. In fact, it gets easier. Sorry, it gets harder to play, but you don't get any buzzing or anything like that. So it's kind of effective in one way. But you probably just would avoid it. You wouldn't try and play the guitar up there on an acoustic anyway. So I'm just going to drop these into place, and I'm looking at them with their slight spread of the strings as intended, and I'm happy with where they're landing. Actually, that's good for a change. I'm just going to cut off the excess here. I don't like untidy peg heads, as the Americans call them. And let's get the others on here. Get back to where I wanted to be. Thank you. Now I don't think Paul's ukulele is going to be ready tonight, for the simple reason that I've put some lacquer on the edge, which I need to let set, and then I can polish it out at a later point, which probably isn't going to be tonight. Put some dots in, and there's a little scuffed on the edges where I cut them, so I needed to just put a bit of lacquer on. Okay, so yeah, this is a better positioning overall, and I hope that the little bit of reposition, or the change, the sinking of the digging out the slot on the bridge to allow the saddle to go in deeper has allowed the saddle to sit more firmly on the piezo, or sorry, the transducer, or whatever it's technically called, the pickup. And the idea then would be we should get a better tone out of this, and that was I think that was one of the complaints that Stephen had, was that this had lost tone along the way because of the for me it's because of the position of that, the way it was leaning forward, and as because it was leaning forward, obviously it wouldn't then be seated cleanly and firmly on the piezo pickup, or the bit, yeah, I think it's piezo. The piezo bits on the transducer thing. Anyway, so now, having sunk it deeper, put in a different bridge, sorry, a different saddle. We should have a better contact on. Now, make sure these things just don't come leaping out, because they seem to have a tendency to. Just going to adjust the tension a bit. A little bit of the excess slack out of it. These are silk and steel strings. Oh, no, that one tried to pull itself right out, courtesy of the peg rising up. That's alright, as long as we get it back under correct tension, it will be fine. Now, I'm hearing a bit of buzz here. Okay, so far, seating well, looking good, a bit dusty still, get rid of that. The question will be how it ends up sounding, so that's the next little test. And I won't carry this on much longer, because if it plays alright through the piezo thingy, then it'll be a case of just kind of leaving it settle and giving it a dust over. I'm just making sure these stick down. Bit of shouting going on over there. Just bear with me while I try it out over here. Hoping that we're going to get clean sound off each of the positions. Playing, that's good. Is this even working? Yeah, it is. This is dB boost presence. Seem to have restored all tone to all the parts of the pickup, which is great. So that's that, pretty much done. Just going to lightly do up these thingies here, which are just kind of mainly for, not for show exactly, but if I can find where I put the other one. Oh, great. It's always the way, isn't it? Something's magnetically stuck to something else. Can't be. I can't lose it. There's not enough space to lose it. 3 of those and 2 of those. Holy, that isn't fair. Right, well, I'm going to have to find one. Go for a look around. It's here somewhere. But these are just basically placed on as covers, nothing else. They're not holding anything down. The tuners are left as tuners, and these are just holding. But yeah, this is realigned the strings, which is what I'm pleased about. So I'm just going to put that here while I tidy up. There we go. The Lindo cleaned up from all its goop, and playing nicely. There you go. Restrung, silk and steel. Strings realigned slightly, better centered onto the fingerboard itself. So there we go. Interesting one, different little game to play there. I still have to find the other one of these little Allen bolts, so I'll be back in a minute when I've turned the house upside down. See you in a minute.